Have you ever found yourself frustrated by a delay? Maybe you were stuck in traffic, missed a meeting, or experienced a setback in achieving something you desperately wanted. In the moment, it feels like an inconvenience, or even a failure. But what if that delay was God's way of protecting you from something unseen? Imagine this. You're running late for work, and you're stuck at a red light that seems to last forever. Frustration builds as you worry about being late. Later, you hear about an accident that happened just minutes ahead of you, at the very intersection you were delayed from crossing. In that moment, you realize it wasn't just a red light, it was God's hand, shielding you from harm. Proverbs 16:9 reminds us, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." God's timing is always perfect, even when it doesn't align with our plans. What feels like a delay to us is often His way of redirecting or preparing us for something better. Sometimes delays are also opportunities for growth. Perhaps you're waiting for a prayer to be answered or for a breakthrough in your life. In the waiting, God refines your character, strengthens your faith, and prepares you for what's to come. So the next time you're faced with an unexpected delay, take a moment to pause and reflect. Could it be God's way of protecting you, guiding you, or preparing you for something greater? There's something painful about a closed door. Whether it's a rejected opportunity, an unanswered prayer, or a relationship that didn't work out, it's easy to feel defeated when something you hoped for falls through. But what if that closed door is God's way of saying, "I have something better for you"? Think about a time when you didn't get what you wanted. Maybe it was a dream job you didn't land, or a relationship you thought would last forever. At the moment, the disappointment felt unbearable. But looking back now, you can see how that no paved the way for something far greater, something you never could have imagined. God is not just in the business of opening doors, He's also in the business of closing them. Revelation 3:8 says, "I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut." But before we walk through the right door, God often closes the wrong ones to protect us from harm, distraction, or settling for less than His best. Closed doors can feel like rejection, but they're often redirection. God sees the bigger picture and knows what lies ahead. Trusting Him means believing that every no is ultimately for your good, even if it doesn't make sense in the moment. So, when you face a closed door, instead of asking, "Why, God?" ask, "What are you protecting me from? What greater plan do you have in store?" Let's continue by exploring a powerful way God's protection manifests: the gift of unexplainable peace in the midst of chaos. There's a unique, almost indescribable peace that God gives, one that doesn't make sense by human standards. Have you ever faced a moment of chaos, fear, or uncertainty and felt an unexpected calm wash over you? That peace isn't from the world. It's a sign of God's presence and protection. Consider someone facing a life-altering situation, a sudden job loss, a medical diagnosis, or a financial crisis. While everything around them screams panic, they somehow remain grounded, trusting that things will work out. That peace is what Philippians 4:7 describes as the peace of God, which transcends all understanding. It's not logical, it's supernatural. This peace isn't about ignoring the storm. It's about recognizing who's in the boat with you. Think of Jesus calming the storm in Mark 4:39. While the disciples panicked, Jesus was calm, reminding them of His power over the wind and the waves. In the same way, God's peace reassures us that no matter how big the storm, He is bigger. Unexplainable peace is one of the clearest signs of God's shield over your life. It's His way of saying, "I'm here, trust me." When you feel that calm in the midst of a storm, it's a reminder that you're not facing the chaos alone. He's already working everything out for your good, even if you can't see it yet. Let's move on to another way God's protection becomes clear: the unexpected help He sends through people and circumstances. Have you ever been in a situation where help appeared just when you needed it most? Maybe it was a kind stranger who paid for your groceries when you forgot your wallet, or a friend who called you at the exact moment you felt overwhelmed. These moments aren't just lucky coincidences. They're often divine interventions. God's protection often shows up through unexpected help. In Hebrews 13:2, we're reminded, "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, For by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. This verse reveals that God sometimes sends his protection through people, even those we don't recognize as his messengers. Think about a story you may have heard or even experienced yourself of someone stepping in at the right time. Maybe it was a mechanic who fixed a car problem that could have turned dangerous, or a neighbor who offered support when you felt alone. These moments are glimpses of God's hand, reminding you that you're never truly on your own. God uses ordinary people in extraordinary ways. Sometimes he sends help through strangers, and other times, he places you in the position to be someone else's help. Either way, these moments are his way of providing for and protecting us, often when we least expect it. As we move forward, let's explore a deeper layer of God's shield, how he protects us from dangers we don't even see. How many times have you walked through life, completely unaware of the dangers that could have crossed your path? While we often focus on what we can see, God is constantly working behind the scenes to protect us from what we cannot. His shield is not just about what he provides, but also about what he prevents. Picture this. You're delayed leaving home, only to later learn that an accident occurred on the very route you were supposed to take. Or maybe you feel a sudden, inexplicable urge to change your plans, and later discover that the change saved you from harm. These are not mere coincidences. They're glimpses of God's invisible hand guarding you. Psalm 121:7 tells us, "The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life." This verse reassures us that God's protection extends to the unseen. While we may never know the full extent of what he shields us from, his promises are constant. He is our watchful protector. God's unseen protection often requires faith. It's about trusting that he is working on our behalf, even when we don't fully understand it. The next time something doesn't go as planned, pause and consider. Could God be protecting you from something you can't see? Now let's look at another remarkable way God's protection manifests. Not through what is withheld, but through what is generously provided in times of need. When you find yourself in a season of lack, whether it's financial struggles, emotional drought, or spiritual dryness, it's easy to feel abandoned. But even in the wilderness, God never leaves his children without provision. Sometimes his protection shows up as exactly what you need, exactly when you need it. Think of the Israelites wandering in the desert for 40 years. Despite their disobedience and doubt, God provided manna every single day. Exodus 16:35 says, "The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to a land that was settled." It wasn't extravagant, but it was enough. God sustained them, not through abundance, but through daily provision. You may have experienced something similar, an unexpected check arriving just in time to pay a bill, a friend offering to help you without even knowing your need, or even a moment of encouragement that lifts your spirit when you're feeling completely drained. These moments are God's way of saying, "I see you, I will take care of you." God's provision doesn't always look like an overflow. It often looks like just enough. And in those moments of just enough, he teaches us to trust him fully. When we stop striving and start depending on him, we realize that even in the wilderness, we're under his care. Now let's explore how God's protection extends even further, through the restoration of relationships we thought were lost forever. Some of the deepest wounds we carry come from broken relationships. Whether it's a family rift, a friendship that fell apart, or a misunderstanding that escalated into bitterness, these fractures can leave us feeling vulnerable and alone. But one of the most profound ways God shows his protection is through the restoration of relationships we thought were beyond repair. Think of the story of Joseph in Genesis. Betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery, Joseph endured years of pain and separation. Yet, in God's perfect timing, Joseph's family was not only reunited, but also reconciled. Genesis 50:20 captures Joseph's powerful perspective. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." In our own lives, God often works in the background to heal relationships. Perhaps a heartfelt apology comes out of nowhere, or circumstances align to bring people back together. These moments aren't accidental. They're God's grace at work, protecting our hearts and mending what we cannot fix on our own. Restored relationships remind us of God's redemptive power. He protects us not just by reconciling us to others, but also by freeing us from the burden of bitterness and unforgiveness. When we let Him take control, He can transform even the most broken connections into testimonies of His love. As we move forward, let's examine how God uses trials to protect and prepare us by strengthening our faith. Life's trials often feel like the opposite of protection. When we face hardship, it's easy to wonder, where is God in all of this? But sometimes God allows challenges not to harm us, but to strengthen us, to protect the purpose He's placed in our lives by refining our faith and character. Consider the words of Paul in 2 Corinthians 12:9. My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Paul, who endured countless hardships, recognized that his struggles were opportunities for God's strength to shine through. Trials strip away our illusions of control and remind us that we're dependent on His grace. Think about a time when you faced a significant trial, perhaps a loss, a failure, or a season of uncertainty. Looking back, you might see how that experience made you stronger, wiser, and more grounded in your faith. What seemed like a breaking point was actually a turning point, where God refined you for something greater. God doesn't waste pain. He uses every challenge to protect us from complacency, strengthen our reliance on Him, and prepare us for the purpose He's calling us toward. These moments, though painful, are acts of protection in disguise, ensuring we're equipped to handle the blessings He has in store. Next, let's uncover another subtle yet powerful way God protects us, through the gentle conviction of the Holy Spirit, guiding us away from harm. Have you ever felt a sudden, unshakable urge to walk away from a situation, avoid a decision, or choose a different path? That quiet nudge in your spirit is often the voice of the Holy Spirit, God's way of protecting you from harm. Conviction isn't condemnation, it's an act of divine love meant to steer you toward what's best. John 16:13 promises us, but when He, the Spirit of truth, comes, He will guide you into all the truth. The Holy Spirit works as a compass in our lives, nudging us away from danger and pointing us toward God's truth. Sometimes it's a gut feeling to leave a toxic relationship or the overwhelming sense that a decision isn't right. Other times, it's the discomfort that arises when we're tempted to compromise our values. Ignoring these nudges can lead us down a path of regret, but when we trust them, we find ourselves protected in ways we never expected. For example, saying no to an opportunity that doesn't feel right might open the door to something far better. That's the beauty of conviction. It may feel inconvenient in the moment, but it's always for our ultimate good. The Holy Spirit's guidance is one of God's most intimate forms of protection. By learning to recognize and respond to His voice, we align ourselves with God's will and avoid pitfalls we might not even see coming. Now that we've explored these 9 unmistakable signs, let's wrap up with a call to action that invites reflection and engagement. As we've explored these 9 unmistakable ways God's shield is over your life, one thing becomes clear. His protection is constant, even when we don't always recognize it. From divine delays to restored relationships, from unexplainable peace to the nudge of conviction, God is always working behind the scenes, guiding, shielding, and loving us. Perhaps as you reflect on your own life, you can start to see these signs more clearly. Maybe you now realize that the closed doors were never rejection, but redirection. Or perhaps you can look back at a trial and see how it prepared you for a purpose greater than you imagined. Each of these moments is a reminder that God is for you, not against you, that His plans are always for your good. I encourage you to take some time this week to reflect on where you've seen His shield in your own life. Write it down, pray about it, and thank Him for His unfailing protection. If this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded of God's protection today. Leave a comment below and let us know which of these signs you've experienced in your life. I'd love to hear your story. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more faith-filled inspiration. Together, let's recognize and celebrate the incredible ways God is working in our lives. Thank you for joining me today, and may you always walk in the confidence of God's protection.